Hi, everybody. I am Anjanette, and welcome to Healing from the Inside Out. So, she was just saying to me, is this live? And all of our shows are pre recorded. So, I want you to welcome Caroline Rena. So, Caroline Rena is a special guest of mine today. I was on her show, Awakening Soul Divinity, and we really had a lot of fun and a lot of blasts just being us and talking about what's really going on and why we're out here helping people. So Carolyn knows what it's like to go inside and really look at that healing through trauma and grief process. And that's how she helps people. So she has 35 years of experience in this area, and she's doing that for 10 years as a coach. And it's not about perfection. And we learn as much from our patients and the people that our clients that we work with as we do from sharing our experience. So it helps us become better at what we do. And we're going to take a little look into how this has served Caroline and what she wants to share with you today. So please help me welcome Caroline Rena. Hello.
Hey. Hi, how are you, Andra?
I'm doing really well. That was very winded. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I was like, wait for the breath, wait for the breath.
I get a thought in my head and I just kind of run with it.
I know, I know. We all do that. I think that's a good place. That might be a good place to start with breathing because we tend to kind of get stuck in what we're doing in the moment and then we stop breathing. And I've done that. I've done that my whole life. And sometimes I catch myself even now doing that. So it's like, okay, we can do this.
I'm used to it. I rarely take breaths as people that know me for a long time. I'm always running, I'm always on the go. And
Yeah.
a lot of people tell you to slow down and do all that stuff. And as a health coach, I kind of teach people to slow down and go in. But that's always been my in. That's always been who I am. That's my
Yeah.
on. I'm on all the time. And then when I do step back and relax, it's a whole new world for me. It's like really tapping into different forms of energy in the universe. It's pretty iconic from me.
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about me. We are here to talk about you. I want to first of all really go into a little bit of trauma and grief and how that really made you start looking inside and seeing how that healing was necessary because so many people I've experienced a lot of grief, and if I'm as honest as I could possibly be, I didn't really work through that grief. I avoided it. I am in healthcare, and I know we go through all those signs of grieving, and I just threw myself into work. I didn't really go in and allow myself to feel and do those things. I did everything wrong, and it took me a lot longer to process and left me very unhealthy because I wasn't doing things I needed to do for myself. And we don't look at grief as trauma, and it is. It really hits our body on a soul level, so much deeper than physical, right? And a lot of people don't see it that way. But trauma can be from anything, something that happened when we were 2 or 3 years old that we're still holding on to and haven't been able to identify it and work through it so that it doesn't keep showing up in our now world.
That's right. Yeah. And we'll start with because and you'll be able to validate pretty much hopefully what I'm saying, but from the physiological perspective, trauma and grief kind of go together. I see them. In fact, I was interviewed on a podcast yesterday where the person asked me how they were connected, how trauma and grief were connected, or were they not? And I was like, I was thinking about it when I was talking about it, it was like, they are more connected than we think they are because of the physiology.
Yeah.
Because what happens is, in trauma, whatever kind of trauma, it can be a macro trauma, which is huge, like rape or war or something like that, or it could be a micro trauma where, for example, I dropped my son off when he was 6 years old at a daycare center and got down on my knees and told him I loved him and all the things that mom would do because I got my first job and I had to drop him off. And when I walked away years later, he told me he saw that as an abandonment. And I was like, with everything else that happened, it's interesting how that works. So as a child, we recognize these things that are happening to us, but we don't know what to do with the emotion or the feeling or the energies that are coming out, because we're not taught how to do that, because nobody really knows, or knew back then especially, how to help our kids walk through it, because we didn't even know how to walk through it, right? So the trauma itself, it's a cycle where there's an opening at the end, and it's not necessarily just in the mind. The trauma gets stuck in the body. This, to me, is where it gets stuck, in that opening, because we never knew how to release that energy, right? So then comes in the physiology of the grief. And the grief, because we're also taught to push our feelings down and not feel anything, which is what you were describing. You didn't know how to, you just couldn't figure out how to grieve. And and most of us are just never taught. Again, we're never taught how to grieve. We're taught how to suppress. And so when we get into the grief work, it's like, but it's releasing. The grief work is about releasing these energies from our body. And we were taught, I forget the name of the woman who first started with the grief process, and it's not like a linear thing. It's definitely circular, cyclical, whatever. It comes, it goes around, it does all kinds of things. And it's not just about crying. It's about anger. It's about happiness. When you think about it, in the case of a person dying, when you think about that, you think about the good times. So you're going to laugh, so there's a whole bunch of different things that go on. But what we don't do is release it. And when we don't release it, that's where the soul comes in, where the soul is starting slowly to just get, dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. And then we lose our light, so to speak. We lose the truth of who we are, because we're not releasing these emotions. And did you want me to go in just an example of my story a little bit here?
Yeah, you can. I did just want to mention what you say. Like, as nurses, we are taught the stages of grieving. So even
Right.
though we do know it, even when I was never taught it growing up, but it was part of my training as a nurse, because we have to determine if someone's dysfunctional in their grieving, whether it's a body part or a family member. We have to be able to determine that to intervene and get help. But
Yeah.
even though I myself knew those, I was taught those
Yeah.
in a different manner, I wasn't moving through those steps. And
Right.
anger, and anger is a big part of that. So you're in denial about it first. You like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And then you move to anger, and then you follow through with the other stages. So holding on to that causes uncontrollable sickness in the body, because it has no place to go. So it just keeps coming. So even though you think you move past it, it never really goes away. Never.
And it's not meant to go. It's not meant
No.
to go away. In my mind, it's part of us. It's not meant to be held, but it's meant to be part of who we are. So
Correct.
it's necessary to connect with that, because if we don't connect with it, we're not really connecting with ourselves either. So yeah, and I think, again, the stages of grief, she was actually working with cancer patients. So it was for the patient that she was doing those stages for, because the end result was known in most cases. And so that's what the stages were for in that respect. But for us, for things like things with loss in general, losing a relationship, because we have expectations. Unfortunately, that's a challenge of the way we want to see things work out in our lives. And when that falls through, we still have to grieve that. And it doesn't necessarily follow that particular lineup, but there's different ways that do follow that process. So it's just, and I was confused, because like you're saying, it's like, well, how come I'm going back to this stage? And why is this happening? It just didn't make sense to me for my experience. And basically, that's why I started to see it for myself as a circular, cyclical process, because I still go into grief over the same things, from years ago, but it's not as overwhelming and overpowering as it used to be. That's the thing that I've learned how to work with my body, work with the somatics of my body, using breath work, using, neurogenic tremoring, all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of things that can be used for this. So for my story, basically, I mean, I think I picked this life to experience trauma. Not quite as much. I don't know. I'm not comparing, but I've heard your story and it's like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like we picked it for growth, for our soul's growth, right? And so my experience, I went through childhood trauma. My parents got divorced. I didn't see my mother for 40 years of my life after that. And I felt at a point in time that I wanted to reconnect with her. And so I did. And so I had to go through the process of not only, well, I wasn't grieving at the time because I didn't understand what it was either, right? But I was just trying to let go and forgive myself for not knowing any better, and forgive her for her because she went through the Holocaust as a child, escaping at the beginning of the war, escaping to Palestine from Czechoslovakia, where the war started, like right in ground zero where the war started. And so with all of this trauma leading into this ancestral trauma, leading into then my marriage and going through parental alienation. And also at the same time, I was in the military. And so they have a thing called military sexual trauma harassment, and harassment is like a slash. And so my experience with that was harassment in my job, outside of my job, after work, whatever, that kind of thing. And so one thing led to another, and losing my children to the parental alienation piece of it, that piece is still working itself out 27 years later. And that's a thing where grieving someone, like I have a relationship with my son, I don't have one yet with my daughter. And being able to grieve someone who's alive, especially a child, so if you want to learn more about parental alienation, there's a documentary out there called Erasing Family, which I was interviewed in and kind of gave some, but and keep in mind when you watch it, this was a while back, so I was in a different space and just kind of trying to work my way through things at that point. But it'll give you an idea of what it is. And so one thing led to another. Up until a couple of years ago, I crashed again into a dark night of the soul. I was almost homeless, and I found a group locally where I live in Florida, and they helped me with resources and support and all these different things to get out of that hole. And as I was doing that, I excuse me, I was also working on that ancestral trauma at the same time. So when I was doing that, the other stuff that started to come back up was that in 2018, my mother died at the end of the year. And that was the trigger to bring up all of the grief for my entire life. So everything from 2018 until, I don't know, about 6 months ago, something like that, was all about the release of this grief and the release of the energy of the trauma and all of the things that were like literally stuck in my body. And that's why I talk about that stuckness, because it not only feels like our whole lives are stuck, but it's an actual representation in the body of that stuckness, because the energy of the emotions that we don't release from the grief stays there, and we start looping. We start, our brains start constantly telling the same story over and over and over and over again and keeping us stuck. And that was my experience with that. So now whenever I feel a little poke or whatever of grief coming to the surface, now I'm able to just let it come up and let it out, because technically that stuff maybe takes 6 minutes at the most, at least from my experience, to release out of the body, and then it feels like a weight's been lifted off. So it's so important to grieve in order to heal that trauma, for sure.
I don't have things that resurface in a grief type way. I have triggers that people can incite in me that will remind me of something that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So, and because I did do a lot of inner work, I feel that's necessary for everybody that's living to to really go in and see what that's about. To you can't move forward until you deal with your past, and a lot of people will teach people that, oh, you don't have to rehash the past, and you could just heal from it. And I don't believe that, because you don't fully really understand it until you start, like, I journal. When I do this, I feel like this. Where is this tracing back to? Why
Mm-hmm.
does this person trigger something in me? Because a lot of times people would make me feel a certain way, and I would have to stop and ask myself, is it something from my past that makes me feel a certain way about myself? Or does being around this person just make me uncomfortable, right? So is it them or is it me? And 9 out of 10 times I found it was me, and something that had been ingrained in me as a child, right? So in order to, and these people weren't bad people, right? So, but in order for me to have those relationships and be around those people, because they weren't doing anything, it was all stuff that was being triggered inside of me. So to
Yep.
protect my peace, I had to work on that,
Mm-hmm.
and stay away from those people until I could be around them and
Sure.
not get those
Yeah.
signals. And so that was healing from the inside. And your body really does hold on to that trauma. So when I did grieve, because I lost 7 people in, I want to say, in 2 years time, that were big parts of my life. And when I did sit down and grieve about it, allow myself to feel, each one of them was a different kinds of grieving for a different kinds of loss. And a lot of times, and I want to make this very clear, because I think that you will confirm this and really understand that grieving is not just related to death. You can absolutely grieve a loss in time at a place in your life, a job that you love that really made you light up and feel good. You can, like she said, grieve a relationship. And because different people in your life are related to different aspects of your life, you can grieve them in very different ways, where you might hear of the passing of someone that you might not be so close to, right? But as an empathetic human being, you can absolutely relate to the loss of that person and how many people are affected by that, even if it's not something very close to home. So, and that really is that connection to self, because you can't really be empathetic and compassionate to other people until you learn to hold on to those feelings and really cuddle yourself,
Yeah.
and be empathetic and compassionate with yourself. But grief is not specific to death, and neither is trauma. What I consider a traumatic situation, and I've had many, might, and I didn't see them as traumas. I just felt like they were life on life's terms, and I just got a bad hand, right?
Well,
Um,
you also have a strong constitution too, so that kind of goes along with that. You're very strong, so you can handle more than
it's
you
not
think you
that I'm
can. It's weird.
strong. It's not that I'm strong. I have a really strong belief about what I'm meant to do here. And I and
Mm-hmm.
and I've always known that since I was a little kid. And I just felt like, and I'm so, like, in tune with that. And like, I've had messages that were so bold and in my face that I couldn't think they were anything other than spiritual.
Yeah,
And
that's what I meant about the strong constitution, though, because it's our makeup. Constitution is our makeup, and so
mhm.
that's what's doing what you're talking about. That's what's
But
really cool.
but it kind of makes you have to go on. I need to get through this
Yes.
because this is the next chapter,
Yeah.
and if I can't get past this, I won't get here. So
Yes.
yeah,
I know
so
what you mean.
I need to pick myself up, dust myself off,
Yeah.
and begin again. And that's kind of what I do always, is just begin again. If something's not happening well in my life,
Yeah.
or friendships and stuff, I ask myself that important question: is this really serving me at this place in time? I've had to let
Yeah.
go of friendships that I've had for decades, because they just weren't serving me. They were a lot of those one-sided relationships, people that were always there for, and that was causing me trauma. Well, what's wrong with me? You think that I'm okay to be there for you all the time, but I
Yeah.
don't need I don't need that same thing. So
Yeah.
if
That
people
sounds like
aren't,
the empath in you.
yeah, but if people can't honor my space and
Yeah.
my needs, then it's really hard for me to have a mutual relationship with them, because mutuality is about give and take, right? So, and if it's only one-sided, then you're not having any relationship with them. They're having that with themselves and telling you
Right.
what they need, what they need, what they need. And I need that give and take. I need people to tell me, the truth. Hey, Andre, you got lipstick all over your face. What is that you're wearing?
You got
You
that thing
know,
in your tooth. Yeah.
I need people to have those conversations with me, because I'm
Yeah.
going to tell them. So I need people that are going to be able to smack an H on their back and handle it when they say, "How do I look?" And I go, "That looks god awful. Please put that orange one you had on back on," because that's who I am at my
Yeah.
nature. You know,
Yeah.
um, I think that a lot of times people lie to save people's feelings, and a lie, if you're lying by omission, you're lying. And it's not healthy for them or you or your friendship, right? Because they really do look to you for those real truths.
Mhm.
Or if you're out and they say, "Well, why didn't you tell me I look like crap?" Well, I'm sorry. There's really no excuse for that.
Right.
Um, I had a friend, true story, when we were little, and she always told you look great even when you didn't. And I remember passing this big mural, like it was a big window or something that we were passing, and I clearly didn't look good, like things up my butt and stuff, like leggings that were inappropriately fit, whatever, right? I mean, that's a dramatic thing, but I knew that she was not someone I would ever ask how I look again, right? Because she saw everybody as beautiful, you know and that was a great quality that she had,
I
but not
was gonna
one
say,
I needed in casual wear. You
yeah.
know what
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So everybody has their place in their life. Grief has its space in your life. Trauma has its space in your life. And you're a very spiritual person, right? I picked up on that the first time we were together, on that call, the first time when we first got together and met. And um, I think that has a lot to do with why you embody and understand the meaning of going in and healing. And a lot of people, Caroline, unfortunately, will never get to that place. They'll
Yeah.
always be looking for something outside of themselves, someone to blame. And the healing doesn't really begin. I was blaming God for taking my sister, taking my mother, taking my friend.
Mm-hmm.
I took my cross off my neck and said, "Really? This is the best you can do?" I was so angry, but it wasn't him I needed to be angry at, because if I really understood our connection and our purpose, then I needed to understand that we live and we die. So I had to look at how I was conceptualizing spirituality and religion for my own benefit and what it really was. And that's when we start to grow, when we could take things out of the context of black and white and start realizing that it's globally different for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. And there, something that popped in when you said that was one of the things that I noticed about my healing journey and why, like, if you knew me 2 years ago, I was all over the place. I wasn't this to me, every time I'm on a podcast, I'm looking at myself, I'm like, who is that chick? I don't see, the same person that I was 2 years ago is not who I am now. So thank you for recognizing that, because it's a lot of work. It's hard work and it's good work, and the willingness, the courageousness, all of that, the persistence, consistence, you can be free. All of us can be free. We just have to choose to do that. And one of the things that I noticed over these 35 years of doing my healing work, especially the last couple of years and closer to the last 6 months, was I remember I was sitting on my couch one day because I cleared all of that energy out of me from the trauma, from the grief, from the work I've done. And I'm sitting there because I remember, and I was remembering how everybody's always talking about the law of attraction, and you attract this and all these great things happen, and and you can get a check in the mail for $500 if you just attract it. And I'm like, for years I was like, that's crap, that's crap, that's crap. That is not how it works. And the day I'm sitting on the couch, I recognized that once all that energy was not in my nervous system anymore, once all the sadness and the anger and the shame and the what's the fear, and fear is there for a reason, so you can't just get rid of fear, because it's a protected, it helps to protect ourselves as humans, to watch out for certain things like tigers chasing after us. But regardless of that, the biggest aha moment, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm calm, I'm present, I'm peaceful, and I'm thinking about that. And within 10 minutes I got a message, like I was doing the paperwork for 2 years to get my military benefits. That day, 10 minutes after I had that thought, I got the message that they came through. And I'm like, So what helped me to see, yes, the law of attraction is there. Yes, it happens in the present moment. And yes, you get to do the work to get all the other crap out of the way, all that energy and all those emotions and things that don't serve you, and people that don't serve you, and jobs that don't serve you, and all those things. By getting all that stuff out of the way, it opened up. The universe abhors a vacuum. They say that. Somebody says that. I don't know who it is. But once that opened up, once all of that stuff was gone, that happened. And I had been literally living on with $1,000 for about 3 years with $1,000 in my bank account, and just trying to find jobs and doing little odd jobs and everything to keep me going. And I was watched over, and I'm grateful for that. And somehow I managed to keep that $1,000 in the bank account and still be given enough to keep going, to keep going, to keep going. And then it happened. And it was like, you got to put the work in. You've got to put the work in, because you deserve to have joy and peace and freedom in your life, 100%. And it's like, when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you just say, I'm done, that is the most the angelic moment that you can experience, right? Those two words are so powerful. I'm done. I'm so done. And now I get to move forward. And when the universe hears that, it literally comes in and starts handing you new opportunities to face, to keep releasing everything until you can get to a point where you can start recognizing the truth of who you are. And that's like the most important thing for us as humans. And that's, what my podcast is about. Awakening Soul Divinity is about awakening our humanity in order to find the truth of who we are, which is our soul divinity. It's just that. And when I figured that out with my own journey, then I got all excited and decided, I'm going to interview people. And now we're going to talk about that, because they've done the same thing. And, Andra is one of those people. And from her experiences and where she is now doing the work that she does, no different. It's no different. But it takes work. And it does take a little bit of courage. And it really is, though, something that on the other side, and I'm sure you will agree with me, Andra, it's like you can breathe for the most part, except when you're talking too fast, like I just did. It's like this whole new world that opens up for you, even with everything, all the chaos going on in the world the way it is right now, there's still beauty there. There's still joy.
There's still peace. There's still peace.
You will find it. Yeah.
You find those moments of joy. So you were talking about the law of attraction. So a lot of people talk about decluttering, because you do need to make room for more, right? So you are sending a message to the universe, if you're that clutter bug, that there's no room for something else in your life. So the law of attraction is all based on energy, and there's different laws of the universe. When, if you really know about the law of attraction, and many don't, and they're just out there saying they're attracting things, but you have to feel good inside to be allowed. So we can talk about decluttering the home, but that's very different from decluttering your soul and letting go of all those things, those other people's stories, those hurts, those pains, those traumas, that grief that we hold on to, that have kept us in the same place and
Mhm.
seeing the same situations again and again. Because it's only by releasing all that heaviness that you can let go and really make room to experience and welcome in more. And
Yes.
that's internal too. You're not going to be open to a new relationship if you're holding on to how many times you've been hurt in your relationship since kindergarten, right? You're just not, because your mind is not there, and your mind is what is the energy that attracts everything to you. So if I wake up every morning and say, "Ah, oh, shit, I gotta go to work,"
Yeah.
that day is going to progress around that energy that I just brought into my day. But if I wake up and I say, "Today is going to be a great day,"
Mhm.
you know, everywhere I go, money chases me. I love money. Money loves me. If we, if we, my bank account keeps, increasing. If we like fill our world with those positive energies, then we have no choice but to attract it, right? Because that's
Mhm.
what the universe is. It's all energy. It's not all these things that people think are circulating around us. Um, and that is about cleaning out that soul and doing that inner work. And I think that, Carolyn, you said it very honestly when you said it's work. Nothing is easy. People go on these diets and they think they're going to take a pill and it's going to change all of their outcomes. Bullshit. It doesn't work like that. You can take all the pills in the pharmacy. If you don't change your habits, if you don't start eating intentionally, then none of that stuff is going to stay. None of it. So it's the same with releasing trauma and releasing grief, right? There's always going to be a new trauma in your life. There's always going to be a new death or a new loss, or a new, whether a job or relationship or someone you love. But it is about not holding on to it, dealing with it in that moment, listening to your body and saying, how is this reacting in my body? How does this make me feel? What does my body need, and how can I make this better for me
Yeah.
in my nervous system? So,
Absolutely.
because I experience certain things people might not think are traumatic. For me, are
Mhm.
traumatic. Like if you're in my space when I'm trying to do something, that to me is a trauma.
That's overwhelming. I know. I
Get
know.
out of my way. I need to do
Yeah.
this. And, because
Yeah.
I get very focused on what I'm doing. And I have a lot of people that try to invade my personal space on a regular. And
Mhm.
I'm that boundary girl, right? So that's traumatic to me. Nope. I got to put my hands up. Nope. Not today. I
Yeah.
got to do what I got to do. Because there's a lot of people that will drag you into their negativity and their well. So it is about protecting that energy, protecting that peace. And big part of this is self-care. What do you need to do to make you whole? Because you can't offer anybody anything in life until you are a whole person. Yeah, you wouldn't want a half a check from your job. You wouldn't want half a man. You wouldn't want, right? Come on, if we think about it, right?
Yeah.
So you have, if you want something and you feel that you're entitled, then why is somebody else entitled to less? So doing that inner work is the best thing we can do for ourselves. It's the journey that always keeps giving, and it never ends. It never ends, right?
Right.
It's not, this happens today, I deal with it once and it goes away. There's always going to be something else that comes up, you know? And
Can
if
I?
you
Yeah. Just that's yes. It's important and to know. that's how life, that's just life. The last thing you said, there's always going to be something coming up. I would like to go back and touch on the declutter thing, because I don't know if you were noticing I was laughing a little more than I probably needed to be in a normal situation. But to be honest with you, part of my journey was being a declutter coach. And my byline was declutter your space, declutter your mind, declutter your life. And what I did was I coached people not only in downsizing and cleaning and packing and getting rid of stuff or clearing out storage rooms or whatever. I was also working with them with their mind, like you were talking about, because the mind with the weight, the mind is part of that process. So it was funny when you were talking about that, because I wanted to share something that I used to share during that time that was so powerful to help to understand what that is, why it's so important to declutter. It's like there's some kind of connection, like writing. When you write, there's a connection to the brain. When you declutter, there's a connection to your soul. So basically what I used to share to people was, like, think about clearing out a junk drawer. You don't even have to go big and go into the whole house and start doing room by room. Start with a junk drawer, right? And everybody's got a junk drawer like this for the most part, I'm sure. You pull all the pile of whatever you've got out of the junk drawer and you put it on the counter. And then you get a couple of containers and put them off to the side that you want to replace into the drawer, like those long plastic containers where you can like organize things or whatever. And it's actually fun to do this as long as you start off with a junk drawer, because you're not overwhelmed. It's fun. Sometimes it gets a little overwhelming anyway, but do the best you can. But you separate and you start digging through your pile, right? And you connect this while I'm talking with your mind. You start digging through the pile and you start taking the things that mean something to you or part of your life, and you put them in these containers, right? And then there's going to be a bunch of stuff like old rubber bands. Well, some people like to keep rubber bands. Like my grandmother from World War II used to collect rubber bands, but that's a whole nother thing. But you've got paper clips. Oh, by the way, you can use those at some point, whatever. But you start picking or little scraps of paper that somehow got in there. You start picking all this stuff out of there, and it ends up being this pile over here. And you're like, I don't need that stuff, right? Same thing, mind. I don't need that stuff. And then you look over to the other side and you're like, oh, well, I have now my scissors. I can find my scissors. I can find all these things that I couldn't find before, my headphones, whatever you keep in your junk drawer. And then you start to replace those things back in the junk drawer, and then look at the junk drawer. Clear mind, clear space. Everything is in order where you can find it, right? And keep you in the present moment rather than going, trying to figure out where all this stuff is. Get rid of all the other stuff in the garbage, and then take a look at yourself, take a deep breath, and you take a look at yourself, and it's like all of this pressure just lifted off your shoulders, and it just seems to be gone. And what my favorite thing was to do every spring was spring cleaning, right? So I would open up the windows. This was when I lived up north, but I would open up the windows and I would turn the air conditioning off and blast music and just do this throughout the house. And the energy from the wind, it was like clearing out everything in the space within self. And if you've ever done any kind of decluttering, think about the way you felt after you were done doing it. That's the biggest thing. And so
I feel amazing. And I don't allow myself to think about it, because my mother used to hold on to a lot of stuff, right? And I remember how traumatic it was just cleaning out a lot of her stuff at the end. And then I kind of have a different way of doing that. I pull everything out from underneath the beds and I put it into piles. Haven't worn in a year and longer. Anything that I haven't worn in a year or longer gets in a bag. I don't allow myself to look at it, and I give it to my husband to drop in the box or somewhere else, because I have things, and then I have things that I like, then I might not have worn them in a year, and I say to myself, yeah, but I forgot I had it. Yeah, but I forgot I had it. And
Yeah.
I'll move that up front in my closet. And I'll say to myself, if you don't wear this in the next 6 months, it's got to go. So I condition myself to get ready to throw other things out, because I've always been a clothes horse. I take very good care of my things, but my styles change over the year from, cozy to, slouch. Like I have sweatpants and say lazy. I mean, I go through my little moods. But I dress for comfort. I love to just be comfortable all the time. And then I have those dressy things. So I have these different things, and I find that as I get rid of things, I bring more in. So the next year there's more to go and more
Mhm.
to go. I think that's what we do. So, but I'm trying to get to a place where it's not traumatizing for anybody else to go through. That's what I'm trying to go
Well,
through now.
yeah, yeah, and there's just something to be looked at about that bringing stuff back in though, because and this is just a part of the processes that I did when you for myself even when you bring stuff back in, there's still I remember I had a letter jacket from when I was a cheerleader in high school, and I carried that thing around with me for 25, 30 years. And when I was clearing my stuff out and I came across this, I'm like, you know, why do I have this? So I ended up cutting the letter off of it and keeping the letter and taking a picture, well, taking a picture of the jacket beforehand. And that's a thing. If you are afraid to get rid of things and you're having a hard time with it, take pictures of it. You probably won't. I've never looked at these pictures that I have, but there's different ways. There's no right way or wrong way to do it. You find the best way. But if you find yourself keeping it or bringing it back in, then
I don't bring in the same thing. So
no, I
I'm
understand.
not replacing something. I just like to shop. I
No,
like
I
to
am
look
right,
good.
and that's what I'm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I'm saying. And I don't personally like to shop anymore. But there's a piece of that where it's like maybe take into consideration that it might be filling something that's still uh not feeling right inside. I'm just throwing it out there. So,
I like to spoil myself, and nobody else is going to do that. So
oh well, then
I
that's
don't I
different.
don't think of I don't think of
That's different.
money. I
Yeah,
don't think of money the way other people do.
yeah,
If it's for me,
yeah,
it doesn't matter what I have in my pocket. I'm going to do what's right for me. There was a
yeah. No,
long
and that's
time.
the
There was a
that's
long time I did without.
I don't know what side you're on. That's
I'm
and that's perfect. If you're doing it for yourself and it's a bringing the energy up, that's a different thing. But there are situations out there and people where the whole is trying to be. It's like with that letter jacket. That letter jacket made me feel good because I wasn't popular in high school, right? But I was on the cheerleading squad. So I kept that because the reason I kept the jacket was to keep that popularity thing happening, thinking that that jacket was the thing that made me popular, right? So there are people out there. We all do. I feel like we all do it, for the most part. That there's something that we hold on to because it holds us to a feeling that we had that maybe we don't think we can get back again. And that's where I was falling. I'm not saying you personally, I'm just saying in general, that's what I fell into. And that's what I found out about the clients that I was working with, where they were holding so deeply onto something. And that was one of the questions I asked was, so, what are you going to feel like you're missing if you get rid of this? And if they really, really, really have a connection with it, don't get rid of it. I mean, that's the thing. And do the things that you're saying. If you aren't going to use it for 6 months or a year, and you're not, it's going to sit there. Or one process is like putting things that you haven't used for 6 months and putting it in a box and taping the box and put the box in the garage and go back in 6 months later. And if you still haven't used any of the stuff, then take it to Goodwill. There's so many different ways and processes to help yourself walk through this. It's everybody's different.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I just wanted to share that because that's what I was holding on to. I was holding on to, I'm not seen, basically. I want to be popular. I'm not good enough. So this jacket's going to make me feel better. But that's not what it was. It wasn't a jacket.
I'm not a material person personally, but I can absolutely identify what you're saying, because I know a lot of people that do fill that void with something else.
Mhm.
For me, that was more about eating, that emotional eating, but material things I've never had. that thing. So I mean, I have to spend a lot of money on a dress I'm going to because I have to receive an award for a gala I'm going to, right? And
Nice.
to me that's kind of frivolous because I don't like I said to her, can I bring sneakers to wear under the dress? Because I'm not I said I'm really not that gown girl, but okay. I mean I've
Right.
worn them, but
Right.
because I have to. I said I haven't been in an evening gown and I can't even tell you how long. Even for my daughter's wedding, I didn't wear an evening gown. I wore something I was comfortable in. So she said, I'm bringing my Adidas. She said, you better bring yours too. I said, okay. But I know that that dress, because it's a very, expensive design dress, will, I will donate that immediately after that
Yeah.
event because it has
Yeah.
no place in my closet. It's not something I ever plan on wearing again. If I have another event, then I will get something new. So things like that I can let go of really easy. But I do have an emotional attachment to my clothes. I always have. Um, Certain colors and stuff make me feel a certain way. Like I feel
Yeah.
good in different colors than others. I'm that child that wore purple and orange all the time and didn't care what anybody thought. I
Yeah.
like it. It
I
stays,
do too.
you know. So, and purple and like just weird colors. And that's who I am. But I am emotionally connected to them because I think they speak to who I am, right?
Yeah.
If I put something on, it's not about how I look in the mirror. It's about how I feel in those clothes. Like if I can put my hands in my pockets, does this feel calm? And if it doesn't, it's not something I bring home,
Mhm.
because I don't try anything on. So let's get back to this whole trauma because we're getting very away from the
So
subject here.
far, yeah.
Um, we're talking about our own everyday traumas, but
Yeah.
so I just before we because we are a little bit over time. So what I do want to let you know that Carolyn does have her own podcast. It is Awakening Soul Divinity, and she's on YouTube. I would very much like for you to like, subscribe, and ring that bell when you're on that show because I think it's a great show, and I think you can get a lot from it and share it with people. This is how we get this word out. There's a lot of people out there that really don't understand what healing is and what trauma is, and they might be feeling a little off, and maybe they're not hitting that weight loss goal, or they're having trouble in their relationships, and all of these things are part of who we are, and all this trauma and that grief and all those things affect every area of our lives.
Yep.
All those things you're holding on to or buts for those relationships or yets, you don't feel safe, right? So these kind of situations make you feel less safe as a human. Your body is wired and tired and looking for release because your body's been holding on to things it really doesn't have room for in your nervous system. So these type of things let people know that there's a reason why they're not healing, and it's not because they're late, not they're lazy or anything else. It's because no one's really talking about these things were very quieted when we were children growing up. I'm 58 years old, so my generation was taught what happens in this house stays in this house. Do as I say, not as I do, all those kinds of things. And I grew up learning to keep my mouth shut because
Mhm.
it got me in trouble when I wanted to express myself.
I know that.
So, so I mean, now I write books teaching children how to not hide their feelings and things like that because I
Yeah.
remember what that did for me. And I write stupid little nursery rhymes. Feelings are okay so that people can understand.
That's not stupid. That's perfect.
But I want people, I mean, they sound silly to people, but
Yeah.
once you've lived through that, you want to create a world of more joy for others. It's apps once you get a taste of that joy. So Carolyn and myself are very busy individuals. It's not like we have nothing better to do with our time than go out and start doing podcasts. It's we want other people to understand that we've been in that situation and we've made it through. And if you are experiencing this, then you should reach out and ask us how we got through it. Ask us, if there are support systems for this, and how you can really get that help because nobody gets through this on their own. I certainly didn't get through this on my own.
I tried for 20 years,
No,
but it didn't
there
work.
were people and support systems
Yeah.
in place, and not people I necessarily expected to be good support systems. Sometimes it came from a perfect stranger.
Yep.
And, you know,
Usually,
yeah,
usually.
usually it does. It comes from a perfect stranger. But Carolyn's been through a lot of trauma. So have I. I've experienced a lot of loss. Most of my family is gone. I have a lot of extended, but no immediate. So we do understand that, and we do understand that it's very difficult time. We are not making light of death, dying, grief. It's a very difficult time, and it's a very individual process. You know, there are certain stages we all go through, and sometimes we don't go through them in the same patterns. Sometimes we go in and out of those stages, and sometimes we don't make it through those stages. And when we can't make it through those stages, that's when we need to reach out and say, I'm really struggling. I have
Great way to
somebody
put
on,
it. Yeah.
yeah, I have somebody on Facebook that's experiencing this, and he reached out to me and said, "How do you do it?" I said, sometimes I'd be lying if I told you every day's a good day. Every part of me broke when this happened.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to keep moving,
Yeah.
because my story was not ending. So I had to keep showing up for it, right? Everybody has a different story, a different life, a different um I don't want to say vision, destiny, right? And some people's destiny doesn't necessarily walk with ours the full path, right? They something happens and they're not there anymore, and you have to understand that you still have to go on, right? um and sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow. I know it is, but we have to, get
Yeah.
busy living, or get busy dying. That's pretty much what they tell us.
I mean,
So
we're technically not even here but we are here for everybody else, but we're here, not everybody. We're here for others, but we're here for ourselves first.
yes.
So that's that kind of when I learned that, it helped me more to understand that the coming in and going out was made it easier for me because I knew that it wasn't permanent. Like if you look at the Buddhists, nothing's permanent. So
No, nothing's permanent. Nothing is permanent. This life
yeah.
is not permanent. And if I really believe that our main purpose here is to forgive one another and help each other. That
Mm-hmm.
is our only purpose
Mm-hmm.
here, to
Yeah.
forgive and help each other get to their destiny. That's what we are here for. So
Walk
you
each
are
other
as much
home.
a part of my destiny as I am yours. We are brothers and sisters, all of us. And a lot of people don't fly with that, but the truth is we are. So
Yes.
the more we badger each other and we separate, the harder this path is going to be, So just be kind. Just, So I want to thank you for joining me, Carolyn, on this version of Healing from the Inside Out.
You are.
Again, if you want to get in touch with Carolyn, you can absolutely subscribe to Awakening Soul Divinity. And how else can they get in touch with you, Carolyn?
So there are other, if you don't want to watch the podcast, there's a way to go through mindbodyspirit.fm and you can listen to it on Spotify and Apple. You can also find out more information about me and kind of some of the work and contributions to a blog I have on the awakeningsouldivinity.com website. And I'm in the process of revamping the work that I'm doing with people to do the healing from trauma and grief and ancestral. And so my CarolineRena.com website has been up for years, but it's going to get revamped again because as I revamp, the website gets revamped. So it's there. However, it may take me a little bit of time because I'm the one who works on my website as well, as well as, editing the videos and, doing all that fun stuff. So there's a lot to be done. And the most important thing is that, I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook. And I think that's it. I don't want to mention anything else because I'm not there yet. So just looking at them. So that's pretty much where that is.
I want to thank you so much for coming in and spending this time with us. I think this is a really strong message and more people need to hear it. I'm
Yeah.
sorry we got off on a little tangent, but I cannot get together with Caroline without talking about everything. That's just who we are. So thanks for watching and have a great day.
Thank you.